Now, to get started for this evening, we're going to have Marty Jalove go over the engaging humor path. So, Marty Jalove of MasterHappiness.com is an international personal and professional life and business coach, a euphoric optimist persistently pursuing his passion of helping hundreds harness happiness. The current winner of both the district table topics and humorous speech contest. He enjoys speaking in front of adults and children, hoping to help them discover their inner bacon, their passion, and teach them how to enjoy life and explode with excitement. So let's give a warm welcome to Marty Jalove with the Engaging Humor Path.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me to come here and take up some of your evening. So Brian invited me today to talk to you about the humorous speech path. And he kind of left it up in the open and said, just talk about the path. And other than that, I'm not giving you any direction. Just get us excited about the humorous speech path. So I was excited when they added the humorous speech path. That was the newest out of the 11 different paths. There were 10 paths, and everyone for the longest time used to promote there's 10 paths, there's 10 paths. Then they added this one as number 11, and it was really very exciting to me because I believe that adding humor to any of your speeches is so incredibly important. And a lot of people go, well, it's not that important. You know, I have to create a very professional speech, and I have to get some information. I've got to convey it in a certain way. But you keep forgetting that it's the emotion and the passion that you give that makes your speech memorable. I always ask people, if you go back to the oldest memory you ever have, the oldest memory that you can remember, you know, a birthday party, maybe it's a funeral, maybe it's something, but the oldest memory you can think about has an emotional connection to it. No matter how far back you go, oh, I remember a trip I took and I sat in the back seat on our way to Wisconsin or something like that when I was a little girl. Okay, everything has an emotional connection to it. Nobody says, I remember sitting on the couch, okay, and that's it. It's got to be something exciting. And the memories that we want to remember more than anything else are those that make us happy, that make us laugh, that bring us joy. Now, a lot of times we won't always remember a joke, but we'll remember how the joke made us feel. That's the most important thing. So when you deliver humor, I have learned through experience and a lot through this path, when you deliver humor, do not be afraid of falling on your face. Okay, there's an old adage of you write 1,000 jokes, you keep 100 of them, all right, tell 10 of them, and maybe one will get a laugh. All right, that's what you've got to shoot for. And it's almost the same when you think about writing speeches. There's lots of ideas we come up with speeches, and we throw them away. We go, you know, after you read them, you go, this doesn't really work. With humor, it works even more so because you've got to pull out some funny. Now, I've taught plenty of people. I've taught regular classes on how to write jokes, and there's all kinds of ways. And every time I teach a class, it evolves into something more. And I've learned from professional stand-up comedians. I've learned from improv teachers. I've learned from being on the stage. I've learned from being on the stage, walking up in front of the mic, starting to talk, and getting no laughter whatsoever. And then delivering another joke, and still no laughter, where you really lean into the audience and seeing, is this an empty house or something? But it's a very scary feeling. And the more that goes through, it gets scarier and scarier. It's much like delivering jokes on a virtual speech, like the humorous speech contest is very tough because everybody is muted and you hear nothing. It is the first time you do that, you deliver a joke and you give it a little pause and you were like, wow, that silence is so incredibly loud. Okay, it's hauntingly loud. Okay, everyone noticed that Patty is still eating bacon. All right, she is trying to taunt me. Okay, she's throwing me off my game here.
It's a tomato.
Thank you very much, Patty. And her mouth is full, so she can't even deny it right now. All right, so getting right to the humorous path. I was on multiple paths, like I was just explaining to someone before. I got into it, and when I joined, Pathways was just kind of introduced. And so I just jumped into pathways. When people talk about the old system versus the new, I don't know the old system. I just jumped into the new system and I love it. I love pathways because it's so perfectly organized. Anyone who says, oh, it's too confusing, I don't understand it, they haven't given it enough time to look at it. It breaks down so quickly and easily. Everything's in the 5 levels, and the first level in every path is pretty similar. And then it gets more complex and more complex as you go along with it. It's a very simple, easy way of keeping track of it and just jumping into it. I love pathways so much, like I explained. Now that I'm out of Humorous, I'm on three other paths right now. So at one point I was on 4 paths. I'm at level 4 and level 5 on 2 of them. So that's why I've got to start working on my next one, because I want to keep them going all the time. I always need reasons to speak. So what I've done was I've created some backgrounds for myself so I can show you these levels. So we'll start with level 1 right here. Wait, of course it's not going to work for me, is it? This is exciting when technology doesn't work for you.
That's what you get for picking on me.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty neat. Okay, so my green screen just has decided not to work. I'm also glad that I have some notes on the screens. All right, it was beautiful because you would have really loved the screen. So I spent a lot of time, a lot of very funny stuff that you're just gonna miss. So every once in a while, just randomly laugh because you know something incredibly hilarious was about to happen. All right, so in level 1, just like every other level, you start out with an icebreaker. Then you go to an evaluation and a feedback and research and presenting. All right, it's just like every other level. But with the Humorous, what you've got to do, it doesn't drive you in this direction, but it reminds you you're studying humor, so find something humorous. A lot of people say, oh, I just started a new path. I've got to do another icebreaker. I've been in Toastmasters for 10 years. I've been in Toastmasters for 2 years. I have to do another icebreaker? Yes, yes, yes. Oh my God, the icebreaker is like my favorite speech. You know why? Because I've got over 50 years worth of material right here, okay? I've got lots of stories to tell. If I were only to tell one icebreaker, I would be depriving you all of the joy of knowing the real Marty, okay? So you always want to tell icebreakers and lean towards something funny. So my icebreaker for the Humorous speech was about when before my daughter was born. I went to a Lamaze class, and I'm going to give you the short version of it. And I don't know if it's called Lamaze or childbirthing or whatever, but we sat there, and me and my wife, and we were like giggling and laughing together, and everyone is very, very serious. And they asked, how many people here have had more than one child? Is this your first child? And everyone raised their hand. It was their first child. They said, okay, so we're all kind of new at this. And I raised my hand, obviously, and said, well, I'm not exactly new at this. You see, when I was first born, I was a baby. So I know a lot about babies. And there was such a hush in the crowd. Everyone stared at me. Every father probably wanted to laugh, but every mother just stared at me like, why don't we shut this guy up, okay? So I continued with that story of where you have to sit cross-legged with your wife leaning on you as she's learning how to breathe, okay? And what happens is a pregnant woman, my wife when she was pregnant was a little bit larger than she was when she wasn't pregnant. And as she leaned on me and I'm sitting cross-legged, my legs started falling asleep, okay? And rather than readjusting, I just sat there and sat there and sat there. And eventually, when she got up, my legs from thigh down were sound asleep. So when I had to try to get up, my legs were like jello, and I just fell over on the ground. My wife can't help me because she's 16 months pregnant, and I'm laying on the ground laughing, and all these people who already don't think I'm funny are just stepping over me and walking out, just shaking their head at me, okay? So you see, everyone's got funny topics like that. Everyone's got a reason to speak, to do a new icebreaker, to tell somebody else something about them. Okay, then following up with the icebreaker right away, you go into the evaluation and feedback. And with comedy, that's exactly what you want. because you've got to remember something with comedy. And that is that what's funny to you may not be funny to anyone else. You know, here I am telling some of my best jokes, and I've got Brian is not even moving. I think that's a still picture of him. And of course, Belinda can't stop laughing. Okay, so I have to be careful how I deliver my jokes because I've got to play to the audience. So the evaluation and redoing the speech is the perfect way to do that. Get that feedback. When people go, yeah, I see that joke you were trying to make, okay, but it wasn't that funny. Maybe if you slowed it down, okay? So humor, because it is so subjective, the feedback, the evaluation is so much more important. So make sure during all your humorous speeches, you really go out of your way to talk to the evaluators and tell them, please give me some more information about, was it funny? Was my timing right? Don't worry so much about the ahs and the ums, okay? Sometimes those add to your humor. Instead, worry about, was the delivery there? Was the timing there? Did you move correctly? Did you just make people laugh? Have the evaluator look at the rest of the crowd. After that is the research and presenting. And what I did for this was very important. I went out of my way to really start analyzing comedians. The comedians that I really liked, the ones that I appreciated, the ones I loved their comedy. And suddenly, by doing this research, you start finding out, wow, these comedians are really dramatically different. The way they deliver just a single joke, and sometimes in your speeches, maybe that's all you want is one single joke. So it's beautiful, but you find the fine tuning of each comedian has their own way of presenting. And it's beautiful to listen to them. But the thing that they all have in common, the thing that I kind of learned before, but the pathway really refreshed it and reaffirmed it to me, was comedy is always about the surprise, the twist. It's bringing people down a path in a certain direction, giving them enough information and enough emotion to push them in one direction that they are about to say they know what's going to happen. And then you twist it completely around and you give them something that's probable, but absurd. Something that they never expected. Still got to be probable, but it's got to be something they never expected. That's what you want to do. All right. So now you can interject a laugh now because I was going to switch my background and it was going to be really funny. So I'll give you a moment to laugh. Okay, that's enough. It wasn't that funny. Okay, now when we go to level two was the next part is kind of more interior, looking at yourself. It was knowing your own sense of humor. It was looking at this and continuing this research that you were doing before about other comedians. All right, looking at how you find yourself funny versus how other comedians come on the stage and they're funny. All right, it gives you additional reasons to watch and study comedians. It's awesome because when it's the weekend and it's time to mow the lawn and I tell my wife, no, I have to watch the Marx Brothers. Okay, and then after that, it's the Three Stooges and then some Ricky Gervais. And before you know it, she has to mow the lawn because I'm doing homework for Toastmasters. Okay, that's the beauty of the humorous speech path. There is so much great homework that you've got to do and it gets you out of all kinds of chores. Okay, next you learn how to connect directly with your audience. And this is where that, I told you before, where the evaluator gets in place. This is where you practice even more. And you know, like we always say, Toastmasters is the best place to practice. It's the friendliest crowd. If I just, messed up here completely, if during this entire time I'm talking for 10 minutes and finally Brian says, Marty, you've been on mute for 10 minutes. We've been wondering where you're going to start. It's okay because this is the place for it to happen because it's okay if I fail here. In fact, if I fail, I'm going to learn something. And this is where I want to learn something. This is where I want to fail. This is where I want to take chances and dare to do something stupid, dare to do something silly. Because if you laugh, then I say it worked. If I didn't get a laugh, then I go, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I should do it a different way. All right. It reminds me of last year when I entered the humorous speech contest. I spent time, I wrote 8 different speeches and I have a big dry erase board in my basement. I'm writing ideas. I have notes all over the place, wrote 8 different speeches till I finally came up with the speech that I said is the perfect comedy speech. It was the perfect speech for Toastmasters. It had every single element. It had a mixture of slapstick, riddles, jokes, everything. It was the perfect humorous speech. And I practiced it over and over and over again till I had it memorized more than I've ever memorized the speech before. I got up, delivered it in my first club, and lost. And I went to some of my mentors who were in there, and I said, what was wrong with it? What should I do with that speech? And every single one of them said, it just wasn't funny. Throw it away. Okay? That gives you an idea of what I thought was funny, what I researched, what I really thought was going to work. Maybe was funny in my mind, but I wasn't considering the audience. So this is what you learn, and you practice, and that skill gets better and better in level 2. Okay. Also in level 2 is an introduction to mentoring. Just like in many of the other paths, mentoring is brought up again because mentoring is so easy. And you know that old adage of, if you can't do something, then teach it. Okay. And so what I ended up doing was I went out of my way to mentor people. I found people that I said, you're funny, but you're just missing that one little thing. And I worked with some kids and I worked with some adults and started mentoring them on saying, let's add just one joke into your speech. And by doing that, it helped me hone the skills. And it got me to analyze my own speeches and say, you know what, there is a way for me to make this funnier. There is a way for me to slow it down and then speed it up. Go really low with my speech and go really high with my speech, and just know exactly when to interject which part of the joke. Now, once you got to level 3, this is where all the fun broke out. This is where it really gets exciting. Level 3, level 4, level 5 was all this really cool stuff where they give you all kinds of options of what you want to do. So level 3, I'll just read some of these really quick. Deliver a social speech, like a toast or a eulogy. That could be always funny. Using presentation software, connecting with storytelling, creating effective visual aids, using descriptive language, all of that kind of stuff that I always loved doing all of that. And I was like, wow, I do all of that already. So I picked things specific that I wanted to sharpen my pencil. I wanted to get a little bit better. So I picked connecting with storytelling. I picked focus on the positive, because there's always negative happening. So focus on the positive and inspire your audience. Those are the 3 areas in that level that I really wanted to capitalize on. Okay. Now I'm going to interject a little commercial here. I am Marty Jalove with Master Happiness. And so what I try to do all the time is I inspire people to be happy. This is my whole gig. I try to tell people to show how to tell stories and share their experiences and make those speeches memorable. And so hopefully that's one of the reasons that Brian invited me here. Hopefully that was the reason, as opposed to he went down the list of 25 other people and they all said no. And they said, well, I guess we have to have Marty. I don't know why I was invited. All right, but we'll keep going. So before I go into level 4, are there any questions about what went on here and what I enjoyed, what I didn't like, anything on this path in particular? Ralph.
Is it basically more about telling humorous speeches or telling a bunch of jokes inside something else?
No. All right. Very good. Excellent question. And you know what? I hate it when people start off the answer with, that's a good question. Okay. And here, but yet I still did it. That is a good question, Ralph. All right. So here's the deal. Here's the difference. If it is just filled with jokes, then it's a monologue. Okay. It's stand-up. And if you want to practice stand-up, Toastmasters is not the place for you. Practicing stand-up is write some jokes and get out on the stage and trying this. This is about learning to speak in front of people. This is about adding a little bit of humor to a larger story, a story that's meaningful, something that somebody can learn from. You could be talking about the new insurance policy at work, and you've got to give a 15-minute presentation on why you moved from one insurance to another. And you could give a dry presentation, 15 minutes at work about that type of presentation, or you could add a little bit of humor to it. All right. So the humorous speech is all about that. That's why so many of these other things were about your icebreaker, your research, and come up with a new speech. All of it was similar to every other thing. They're all about giving speeches, conveying a message, conveying a story. Okay. Ralph, does that answer your question?
Pretty much so. What if you're not funny naturally?
Oh, you know what? When anyone says they're not funny naturally, then be funny unnaturally. Okay. I think that everyone has the opportunity to do so. You just have to let yourself go. And what it is you study just a few little things. If you want to be funny, okay, it's just like everything else. It's just like every speech we give. It's a swimming pool. You're either going to jump in or you're going to get pushed in. All right, one way or the other, you're going to be in the water. Okay, so a lot of us, we take that first step and we go, okay, I gave my speech. And our speeches are boring. And we go, hi, my name is Marty, and I just wanted to tell you that I love Toastmasters, and Toastmasters is a wonderful place, and I've learned a lot. And that's the end of my speech, okay? But I say, wow, I conquered my fear. I can speak in front of a group. Okay, that's the very first tiny step. The second step is learning to add emotion to it. Okay, make it a memorable speech. The next step, or one of the many next steps, is adding a little bit of humor to it. Okay, and not being able to be afraid of failing, not being afraid to deliver a joke to a quiet audience. All right, so if you're not naturally funny, learn about some of those things, and there are plenty of books, as well as Toastmasters offers all the time lots of workshops at the individual clubs as well as at the district. Lots of workshops. We did a workshop on comedy, how to write jokes, once before, and I would love to do that again. All right, so anyone, I don't care who it is, I could pull you up on the stage and work with you right there and write a joke. And Ralph, you will be funny. I promise you that. Okay, does that answer your question?
Pretty much so. I haven't laughed so hard as we had a speaker. I forget his name now. I don't think it was Valentine, but he had a speaker, and he was talking about taking pictures with his girlfriend and so forth. And that was one of these breakfast things on a Sunday. And
Okay.
that's the first time in my life that I've really been dropping tears to laugh. Otherwise, it's just my wife and I insult each other, and that's basically what
But you know what? I'll tell you, Ralph, that's funny. If you sat there and you told stories about you and your wife, even if you're saying with the way that your wife insults you, do that. Make it about yourself. Make you the butt of the joke. If you did that, most people would laugh because they can connect with it. Okay, and you might not have everyone roaring and crying, but you'll get smiles out of the audience. And when you're giving a speech, remember, when you're giving a speech, like I said, let's say it's an insurance speech, the important thing is not getting people laughing in the aisles and crying. You want them to continue to pay attention, but you want them to remember what you're talking about. And when you're interjecting a little humor, they're going to feel more comfortable talking with you. Okay, that's what this is really all about. Okay, any other questions? No? Okay, so I'm going to move on to level 4 here. So level 4 got into, I'm sorry, did somebody have a question? I just heard somebody.
Yes.
Yes, oh, I'm sorry, Patty, go ahead.
I even sent it to you in chat so that you could find it, but it's all right. So whenever I'm practicing a humorous speech, the first couple times I do it, it's funny, it's great, it's awesome. And the more I practice it, the less it's funny. How do you avoid that?
Okay, I would say there's a couple things. Is first off, the more you practice it, it's the same with anything. Even if you told an emotional story. I told for the International Speech Contest a very emotional story about my daughter. Okay, and it was so much that the first time I told it, I had to hold back the tears. I was crying myself. The second time, I got more control of myself. But the third and fourth time I did it, what happened was it becomes rehearsed. Okay, and I didn't feel the same emotion. So Patty, when you're telling a joke, it's the same thing. It's funny the first time, but then what you're doing is you're just making it repetitive, and you're just going through the movements instead of feeling the thoughts behind it. what I would suggest for you to do is go completely in. I mean, just like I said, jump into the water wholeheartedly, both feet in. And what you do is during the punchline, get in close to the camera, deliver it and go, what? Okay, do some, exactly. Do that because that will help you punch it. So not only do you pause before you hit the punchline, use your whole body. You change your voice, change your emotion. Maybe you're sad, now you're happy. Okay, something, but move in, and that will help you because every single part of you should be part of the speech. Okay, and that will remind you because if you do this whole thing of going, okay, so here's the punchline. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. It's, come on, here's the punchline. Okay, really get into it so that you feel it inside you. Okay, I write speeches while I'm walking my dog outside, and it's funny because sometimes I'll talk out loud and I don't really care what the neighbors think, and sometimes I'm talking in my head, but I find myself sometimes crying because I'm writing something very emotional, or I start laughing, and then I just kind of like look around. It's like, oh well, you know, if somebody saw me, it's too late now. But I continue to do that, and I try to hold on. And if I can get myself to feel emotional while I'm just thinking about it and writing it in my head, I stop and I jot that down in my phone. Okay, so you've got to continue with that and give it everything. Okay, I mean, I always tell people, you know, it's that same thing. I'm going to start the joke here, and I'm going to talk like this, and the punchline, I might come here. Okay, I might start the joke here, and the punchline, I'll go. Okay, but the idea is to really drive home that idea so you feel it physically, you change your voice, and change the emotion. Okay, even if it's happy to happy, make it happy to euphoric. Okay, happy to, oh my God. Okay, that's what you want to do, and really drive it home, exaggerate it, and that way you will be reminded in every aspect of your being that that's the punchline. That's what you want to hit. Okay, does that make sense for you, Patty? And I'll tell you another thing, even if the joke's not funny, if you do enough of this, everybody laughs anyway. Okay, so that will work. And I learned that from teaching little kids. My best audience is 7 and 9-year-olds. I am a riot. Okay, so that's great practice. But all you have to do is just command the screen and you will win. Okay, any other comments? Any other questions? No? Okay. All right, so level 4 was the next part. It started getting into it. And what part of that was impromptu. And impromptu is cool. Impromptu means I don't have anything prepared. All right, and what's really neat about that is that whole idea where I teach people how to write jokes. Come up with something and you walk up in front of the audience and start asking questions. Tell me about a situation, a place you could be. Tell me about your favorite food. Tell me about a person, anything like that. And try to build a scenario. When you get all of this information, try to build a small story. And while you're telling the story, remember what I said, create a path that everyone goes, okay, I understand where you're going. And then at the right moment, pause, jump into the screen and say something probable but absurd, something they didn't expect, and just turn it around and just try it. Just try it. Just be completely impromptu. Just give it a shot. And the worst that'll happen is people will laugh at you instead of with you. But either way, you're going to get a laugh. Okay? So that's what you want. And so with that level, the impromptu idea was really neat. It's like I said, jumping in a pool. Everyone here, if you went to a pool and it was hot outside, we were going to go in the water and it was 4 feet deep, we would jump in the pool. We'd go down the ladder, get in the pool. If I told you this was the diving end and it was 100 feet deep, okay, every once in a while, somebody's going to go, ooh, I don't know if I want to jump in, okay? Even though 100 feet deep and 20 feet deep is 80 feet different, but neither one you're going to touch the bottom. It doesn't really matter, all right? But the fear of the bottom of the pool, the fear of failing in comedy, the same thing. Just jump in and try it. I cannot tell you people enough about do it here in Toastmasters. Okay, because if I fail in comedy and Toastmasters, you're going to get everybody saying, you know what, I didn't understand what was funny about that. I didn't understand what you meant by that. I didn't hear this part. You rushed right through it. Okay, possibly if you said this, this, and this, it would have been funnier. Okay, so try it here first. Trust me, you want to try your comedy here in front of a friendly audience before you go on an open mic somewhere. Okay, because unless it's also, open mic is a great diet exercise because you sweat the pounds off with the enormous silence of the audience. Okay, so maybe you want to try that. I don't know. All right, so to continue with that impromptu in level 4, again, there's some elective projects, and that was cool. Now they get into things like create a podcast, build social media presence, manage a difficult audience, write a compelling blog, manage an online meeting, etc. Question and answer, public relations. Well, this was all perfect for me because this inspired me to, again, work on my business, Master Happiness, which you can find me at masterhappiness.com, also on Facebook and Instagram. Okay, and so what I was able to do there was I was able to do all of that. I was able to put up a blog. I was able to do a lot of information by just saying, I'm going to do this. I am going to master this and make this work and create this, and then go in front of one of my clubs and talk about it. Okay, and continue to introduce it. And I'll tell you, you end up loving it because some of the jokes I tell online are silly, stupid. Some of them, people go, was that supposed to be inspirational or funny? I don't know. Okay, and so you just continue to experiment. Life to me is nothing but an enormous, giant inspiration or experiment. Okay, so I just continue to try everything. So for level 4, I built a social media presence. I started writing a compelling blog, which turned into an Instagram and Facebook ongoing piece. Managing an online meeting was cool. Managing online meetings, wow, what a blessing we had with COVID. All right, knock on metal. Okay, it was awful. I mean, because I heard there's lots of bad things about COVID, but for us, for me specifically, it's been really good because what we've had is just one online meeting after another, after another, after another. I've had as many as 8 online meetings in a row because of this. And I continue to do this. And every single meeting I do, I make sure I am laughing. I have never laughed so much before in my life. Part of the most fun part of it is I'm in my basement and I shut the door to the basement with a big sign that says, quiet, I'm filming. And my wife and my kids leave me alone all day long. I can nap down here. I can watch TV. I have a refrigerator. It's like my own little vacation, okay? So this has been such a wonderful time for me. And part of it is just the ability to do all these online meetings. And think of this, could I do this online meeting? I mean, otherwise, I would have had to travel to your club to come and do this. I would have had to travel to all these other ones. I'm going to be doing something for a club in Texas, some of these other places that I would have never been able to do before unless it was online. So that's what's all exciting. All of that stuff is cool, and it's all in the steps of going through this path. Then finally, level 5 is when you're finishing all this up. And keep in mind, a lot of the paths are all the same, but you put a lean towards this. This one puts a lean towards comedy. So everything you do, you want to continue to improve on your comedy and keeps tweaking that. It keeps pushing you in that direction. And it encourages you to look at other comedians. I started buying more books on it. I started going to another club, which is on hiatus right now, which is Good Humor Toastmasters Club, which are filled with some of the funniest people. And that's tough to deliver a humorous speech in front of humorous speakers. Okay, Belinda, you were there at our club meeting once or twice. And it is tough to speak there to be funny because these people sit there going, oh, yes, yes, that is funny. Okay, so that's a real tough crowd. I would rather have silence than that. Okay, so this humorous speech contest continued to go on and on, or I'm sorry, the path continued to go on and helps tweak it. So it ended with moderating a panel discussion. So we brought up, and I did a full panel discussion about what is funny, okay? How funny has evolved. There used to be racial humor. There used to be humor against blondes. There used to be humor against all types of things. And we have changed. And is every joke offensive, or what should we say and what shouldn't we say? Even to the point of impersonations, where I used to do a lot of impersonations, and I've eliminated almost all of them because I'm sitting here going, wow, I don't want to insult anyone, and I never knew what I was doing was really demeaning somebody else. Okay, so you ended up doing a panel discussion, which also led into another speech, was the ethical side of comedy, where you sit here and you say, are there things that you shouldn't laugh at? Okay, and you work your way through it. I come from a family, and I know you're all going to roll your eyes or something like that, but we literally laughed at everything. Absolutely everything. My father was like that. All of my brothers were like that. At my father's funeral, my brothers and I were standing in front of the casket laughing, okay, where the people who were there were looking and they were insulted. And we were like, this is my father. This is what he would have appreciated, okay? And we would take turns telling each other jokes that Dad had told us. And that's how he wanted to go. And that's how I would like to go. I don't want people crying at my funeral. I want them laughing at my funeral. So the question is, how the ethical part of it is knowing your audience even more. And what is funny to you may not be funny to everyone. If you can remember anything that you're ever going to learn through this whole thing, is what is funny to you may not be funny to anyone else. So understand your audience. The jokes I'm going to tell you, or the things I'm going to joke about with you, I'm certainly not going to joke about with my 7 and 8 and 9-year-old students. The jokes I tell them, I'm certainly not going to share you because they'll probably go over your head. Okay. But they, again, it's a completely different audience. So understand your audience, share the right type of humor. And then lastly, when you're done, and I tell you, suddenly you click that button and you're like, I'm finished. I wanted to do more. Okay. When you're done, you do a reflective speech. Similar to what I just did here, you do a speech in front of a club and you talk about what you went through, how it changed you, what you learned. And at that point, when you finish that, you've completely successfully finished that path. And I encourage every single speaker, I don't care what other path you go on at all, but I encourage you to do this one. This has by far been the most fun. The speech that the path I've enjoyed more than any other path. So much so that I may repeat the path, okay? And just go ahead and do the whole piece. I may mix the two paths together because I enjoyed the instruction of saying, go in this direction, go in this direction. I really, truly did, okay? So as I wrap up, are there any other questions? I'm sure I used more than my time, didn't I, Brian? Okay. Well, thank you for having me. If there's no other questions, just go out and give someone a reason to smile. Remember. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Marty. I think we all enjoyed that presentation.